Guys. There we go. And since we have prayed, this book for me is all about decisions and how life decisions affect other life decisions and other people and other regions. Many of you, I'm sure, have read this beautiful book. And I would like for you to tell me, what do you think this book is about?
The Ruth is it's about the love of a mother-in-law and a daughter.
Okay. And that is true. That is true as well. Anyone else? What do you think Ruth is all about? This book that's just nestled right in Old Testament there. No one else? We've all heard this book our whole lives as people who have been in church.
Say something.
You don't want to say anything, Patty?
Well, I think it's about honoring God through his commandments to honor your mother and your father. Naomi became the mother to Ruth. And to me, it was all about her dedication to honoring her mother. And in that way, honoring God.
Okay. That's true. And also that's true about this book. Anyone else want to say what they think it really is all about? Linda?
I see it as love, family love, and godly love. You have to love, we say we love God who we've never seen, and then we don't even love our family that we see every day. I see what she's really exemplifying love, true love.
That also is true. I don't think anyone here would say anything untrue about this book. If anyone else wants to add anything, Denise, do you want to add anything?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
Taking a leap of faith.
I had to pull images that I had to put up here because I just thought that was so pretty.
That is.
Let me move some things around here. The book of Ruth is a beautiful story of love, loyalty, and redemption. One of only 2 books in the Bible named after a woman. This narrative masterpiece tells the story of the salvation of Ruth, the Moabitess. Through her relationship with her mother-in-law, Naomi, Ruth learned about the living God and became his devoted follower. Abandoning her family and homeland, she demonstrated both her love for her widowed mother-in-law and her faith in Israel's God. Her faith was well placed, for God not only provided for her, God also placed her in the messianic family line. So now think about that. This is nestled in Old Testament, where you get a plethora of debates about according to the law, you are not supposed to marry outside of anyone that's, not an Israelite. But here we have this Moabitess woman who is now in direct line with the Messiah. So I say God had a plan. God was making decisions as well. Because if you remember, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I preached about Yeshua and God preparing a body for Yeshua. That body had a DNA blueprint. This woman had something that needed to go in that DNA. All of that complete thread of DNA to be met in Mary for our Messiah to come forward. That's my 2 cents on it. I think it was more about DNA than anything because God was preparing a body for his son. So in the day, I named this decisions because I think it's all, we make decisions all day, all day. We don't think about it. And sometimes we don't realize we made decisions that affect many people, sometimes affect few, or greatly affect us. In the days when judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem, Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Maglon, Kilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. She was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Oprah, the other named Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, oh, someone, you got that, Paul?
Yeah.
After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Kilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So she's living in a strange land. And everyone that she journeyed to the land with, they're now gone. So as the book opens, we meet a Jewish family which left Bethlehem. Now, Bethlehem is called the land of bread. There was a famine. There was no bread in the house of bread. Go figure. Judah, of course, means praise because of a famine, and settled in the land of Moab, southeast of the Dead Sea. The parents, Elimelech, means my God is king, and Naomi, my pleasant one. The sons were Mahlon, which means sickly, which I'll show you that again, and Kilion, pining. It would have been better to stay in the land and trust God than to immigrate to Moab. So they were Ephrata, root of Ephrathites. The ancient name of Bethlehem means fruitfulness or house of bread. So isn't it interesting? All these decisions, what caused their decision as we deal with the world within this text? Where they were living, they were out of food. Didn't say they were out of work. It does not say they didn't have anywhere to live. Remember, all the children of Israel were given their portion of land. So it seems that the move was for food because there was a famine in the land. Simple as that. They didn't sell their land to get money to then go try to buy. It doesn't tell you any of those things. But we do know they went on the move to a foreign land just to have food. That, to me, when I start going through my noggin, that means they had money to buy food. They just had to go somewhere where they had food to sell. It's like if you go to Kroger's and they don't have eggs, where are you going? Publix?
Publix.
There you go.
Piggly Wiggly.
Exactly. So that, to me, I don't know, share your thoughts. I don't want to read anything into the text that you don't see, but I do like to understand what is it you see in the sacred text. So that's what I see, that a family that wasn't poor or anything like that, they went somewhere where they could have used, at least utilize their money and buy something.
So why does it say they'd be better off staying in Bethlehem?
Because it's their homeland.
So they're supposed to stay there and starve?
Many of them made their way through. You have to realize this too is in the time when there was judges and things were not as copacetic as they should be. There was a lot of lawlessness and things like that. And then there was a famine on the land. So maybe it was cheaper to go to Aldi's over in the Moabite land than it was to sit there and deal with a bunch of greedy thieves there in Bethlehem. That's just where my imagination starts to go wild. So that's a good question that you're raising, Paul. That's why I said raise those questions, because then we have to think through these different realities these people may have been grappling with, because judges were in the land. There was no king. There was fighting. They were still trying to grapple as a new country. They were disagreeing with things. Anyone else?
So were they struggling with trusting God? Because it said for them to stay there and trust God. So do you think they were having some doubts?
I don't know if me personally, I would say they trusted God more than anyone to go to a foreign land, considering Israel came in and took over land. Was it with peace or was it with fighting? And the Moabite people, just like all of the other people in that region, they all had their little squabs with Israel. So they venture out really in some ways to the unknown. It doesn't say they had a friend they went to, anything like that. So let's establish this, believers. They had money because they had money to go get somewhere to live and to buy food. When they got to the Moabite land. Anyone else can think of any other things there or questions? The house of bread, Bethlehem. So now let me tell you now where Bethlehem is now. Would you stay there now?
No.
No, because they bombing it. So, you start to look at those type of things and bring it to reality, because these are just God's people like you and I who are making decisions. This ain't no one special, anything like that. This is just people's testimonies and lived experiences. The time of Judges. The time of Judges was characterized by moral decline. So it is not surprising to find the land undergoing famine. God's promised chastisement for disobedience. Elimelech should not have left the promised land, least of all to settle in Moab. Now that's this writer's opinion. That's not my opinion. Had he never read Deuteronomy 23, 3-6, if somebody will pull that up and read it for me, why not settle with his Jewish brethren east of the Jordan River? He led his family from the land of the living to the place of death and barrenness. Neither Mahlon or Chilion fathered children. So someone read Deuteronomy 3-6. So to me, when I read a commentary and I pull it in, I measure it and I tell you to measure it, because nobody know your God the way you know your God for you. And don't be quick to give the authority of what you think away because somebody has a certain degree. Doesn't say they were led by God, anything. They got to be left. Could it be they were trying to get away from their own people that were getting on their nerves? They didn't want to go settle with the Jewish people. Maybe they had judged their people as not worshiping properly, not following the tenets of the law. I don't know, but there's a wide range of things you can say within that. So who has Deuteronomy 23, 3-6?
I got it. No Ammonite or Moabite or any of their descendants may enter into the assembly of the Lord, not even in the 10th generation. For they did not come to meet you with bread and water on your way when you came out of Egypt, and they hired Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor in Aram Naharaim, to pronounce a curse on you. However, the Lord your God would not listen to Balaam, but turned the curse into a blessing for you, because the Lord your God loves you. Do not seek a treaty of friendship with them as long as you live.
So you think about that. That's why I say this is a God thing. Ruth had a little bit of DNA that was put in her when she was brought here that had to be in the DNA of the Messiah. So you get that, and that's written in what we call Torah. So I always remind you guys that Torah is law. The 5 books are written by Moses. After that, you're going to get the writings, the law, and the prophets. So this is probably part of just the writings. I find that interesting because some of the, not in this, but later on, when they come back from Babylon, if you remember, it was Ezra who stood up and made them put away all of their foreign wives. Some people believe that some of these books were then pulled in and highlighted to say you're wrong for doing that. That's just my 2 cents on it. I'm not saying I'm the law myself and it's right. That's just my 2 cents. And as God's people, and this is God's word, we can talk about it. There's no law about that. Anyone else have a comment right here, especially after Paul read that?
I have a question, ma'am.
Go ahead.
It says the time of Joseph was characterized by moral decline. Can you talk to me about the moral decline? How they declined in the principle?
Moral decline within the Jewish community generally deals with the fact that they're doing something like this. They're marrying outside of their community. They may be eating meats and things that they deem unclean. They may not
Because you
keep
said something that really caught my ear, and that was listening to someone who had a degree. I think you were going along that lines, or letting someone sway you from something, even though they may have a degree, they're not. I think you were saying like they may not be assigned, or they may not, they should not speak into your life or something. Is that what you were saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm telling the believers is that you have a right to take ownership of your God and even the sacred text. While I might add commentaries like this from a PhD, it doesn't mean I agree with them. But I want to highlight this type of thought because it does exist. They feel like maybe this man should have never gone and things like that. Well, then we wouldn't have such a beautiful story of what it is to really take on the love of a mother-in-law and turn it into the love like a mother and a true daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
So that was a good question. So all of people who do that hard study and hard work, I'm not trying to per se disrespect them or anything, but I will say just like at times we will take things at face value and many things can be hidden in plain sight. I'm a proponent of having critical thinking and I just happen to use mine. And I think many of you do too as well.
And you know, I might add there at the end that there was no guarantee that Marlon and Killian would have had children had they stayed in Judah, had they stayed in Bethlehem.
Or if they would have married, because you would think, I mean, they were already, to me, it doesn't say it in the text, they were at the age that they could take wives. So did no one want them to marry their children? I mean, just saying. You know, we looking at the text. This is about what happened and things like, were their sons ugly? Or maybe people just didn't want to marry them. Now, I ain't wanting to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me. But those are the type of thoughts that kind of, well, what was wrong with them? Because they left. It doesn't seem to me that anybody begged them to stay.
And if they had money, then they should have been able to find someone a bride to buy.
Thank you, Paul. There
Wasn't
you
that
go.
the
They had to
wasn't
pay a
that kind of
dowry.
yeah.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. So maybe why buy when you could maybe get it for free or cheaper? Just saying.
But a lot of it still goes back to the famine, doesn't it?
It does go back to the famine. So things probably when you have a run on bread the way we did, then bread became very costly. Then they acted like we didn't have eggs and they want to charge you $8 and $9 for a dozen eggs. Some people gave up eggs.
Julius did.
I don't blame you because they became very expensive, very expensive. So you can see there's a myriad of things that's going on in this text. So we're not just staying at the surface, at the black and white of what's written. We're getting down into the minutia of it, which is always a good thing to do when you're looking at sacred texts. You're going to dig in and dig out and get all the goodies that God has in there. So after the dad died, his sons married Moabite wives. Mahlon married Ruth, and Chilion married Oprah. Although Moabites were not specifically named in Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 3. Now, what you read before, Moabites was mentioned, right? Paul?
Yeah.
So it said, now, although Moabites were not specifically named in Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 3, as people whom Israelites should not marry, but it seemed like from the other reading, they had a little attitude toward them. I'm just going to say. It is clear from the latter references that they were included by law. Ezra 9, 1, 2, Nehemiah 13, 23 through 25. So I hope you guys are making your notes. The law also specified that Moabites were not allowed to be received into the congregation of the Lord to the 10th generation. That's what Paul read to us. I would say they felt a little way about them Moabites, didn't they? Just like sometimes we feel a little way about the self-checkout at Walmart.
But why?
It says because when they were coming from the wilderness, they did not give them certain things. What was it? Food and water and things like that. They were not gracious to them.
Well,
as people coming into the land.
They tried to curse them.
Yeah, Paul reminded me that Balaam, was it Barak? Balaam or Balak? Tried to, well, actually, I think the king was trying to pay him to curse them. And every time he tried to curse them, God made him bless them. So you can read more about that in the book of Jasher that I've told you about, that I read, where he's literally, he knows how to divine and things like that in a certain way to pull in God's presence, to speak in a way and make offering for God to answer on his behalf, his petition in the positive. And what his petition was, curse these people that have come out of Egypt. And God said, no, 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 no. You will not curse them. So he had an audience with God because God was talking to him and he's trying to curse these people. And God said, no, 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 no. And if God is saying no, to me, that means you don't want to be on the bad side of God after God has said no. What are you going to say? Well, why can't I, God? Tell me all the reasons I can't. Sometimes as believers, we do that.
And Charlotte, the Moabites, one of the tribes that God told them to get rid of, told them to kill later on?
I don't know. They may have been involved in something. I'm not sure they were ever exterminated per se. I would have to go back and look because you have so many wars going on during the time of judges and things like that. You'll get these people come in and they may kill off that particular army, and the rest that may survive drag they beat up bodies back to where they come from. But there's not as many times as we think where they go in and they totally destroy. Okay. So these people were afraid of Israel because of the great things God had done as they came across the wilderness. So let's see. The law also specified that Moabites were not allowed to be received in the congregation of the Lord to the 10th generation. Grace overruled in Ruth's case. So that's what this commentator is saying. I say God overruled. God knew exactly where that particular strain of DNA needed to be.
What do they mean by the congregation of Israel? Congregation of the Lord.
just like we receive into the congregation.
Like a church?
Yes.
Or
If you go to a Jewish synagogue, we didn't just walk in as students, we were invited and approved through the rabbi that was teaching us. Now you all know in America, you can put on your Sunday best or your Saturday best and go up to a Jewish synagogue to worship. They might not let you in if they think you're a threat because you're not part of the congregation.
And so,
Mhm.
so what
When
they're
we
barred
went
from,
for, go ahead, Paul.
so what they're barred from is going to church?
Yes, even the outer courts. Because if you know the setup of how they worship, there was an outer court that, Gentiles and some people could be in, but they were barred from that. And then you come toward the inner court, you're going to get the Jewish women. And the way they divide the Jewish women from married and single now, the married women wear a hat, which, we got that all wrong in the Christian church. Everybody wear a hat,
Mhm.
whether they're
Not
married or not.
everybody.
And
Or they used to.
They used to, but some
and I
churches,
think also,
go ahead, Julius.
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, please finish.
No, I was going to say in some churches, you can't
I
see
was just gonna say,
the preacher or the choir because of the hats. Just saying. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Mhm.
my internet's delayed again. I'm so sorry. I think also the color of the rabbi's garment was changed from the Jewish. You just mentioned the hat, but a lot of the rabbis, I think they were black now with the stripes. But that was also altered because I was taught that it is supposed to be blue. The color of God is originally blue, but they
Well,
changed a lot of things, the rabbis.
it's taught differently depending on what sect of Judaism you're in, from Reform to Conservative.
Yes, ma'am.
To the Christian Jews,
Wait, there's
conservative.
Christian Jews? I thought they didn't believe in the resurrection.
There's a whole denomination of Jews who are Christian Jews. And in Atlanta every year they have a massive Seder. I don't know if they
Of
have since
Jesus?
COVID.
Excuse me,
Yes.
excuse me, excuse me. I need to call the EMT. I just failed. So I'm trying to get off my phone. So
Oh,
excuse me, okay?
All
All
yeah, I
right,
hope
I'm
you're
trying
okay.
to call the EMT to get me up off the floor.
Are you by
Thank
yourself?
you, thank
right.
you.
Attorney.
He's out, but he's on his way. Thank
Okay.
you.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness.
Paul, we need to go over there?
I think so.
Oh my. Do we need to do anything? Can we call? Well, I don't want to call because usually they go to the location of your phone.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty good about
She's
responding to her.
calling.
She's calling.
She said she was calling the EMTs and that Ernest was on his way back. He's not that far away.
Okay, so guys, we definitely let's stop and just pray, God, whatever Miss Virginia needs right now, may you meet those needs. May no hurt or harm come to her from her fall. May Ernest safely get to her, the EMT safely get to her. In the name of Jesus, I pray.
Yes, Lord.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes,
Amen.
amen.
And
So what I was saying to Julius is, yes, there is a whole, like, I don't know if it's denominated, but there is a large group of Jewish people who claim to be Christian Jews. They honor Jesus as the Messiah. They think he finished everything that was supposed to be accomplished by the Messiah. And sometimes they give seders for Christian people to show them all of the Jewish things there. And they will give you why they think that represents Jesus. Even when they have the matzah and they stack 3 crackers on top of each other, they pull the one out of the middle out and they break it. And for them, that references the creator, the son, the spirit. The son was the one pulled out and the one that was wounded and broken
And
for
broken
us.
for us. Mhm.
So Patty,
Mhm.
you and Paul may remember that because you were at that Seder, but it was a Jewish one. Nobody's here that went to the Christian one with me, but it was really good. I mean, you sit there and go, whoa, because as people who grew up in their faith and know the minutia, they pulled out things you wouldn't even think about and said, yes, these point to Yeshua.
Mhm.
So after 10 years, Grace overruled Ruth's case, as we shall see, permitting her descendant David to become king of Israel. After 10 years, Machlon and Chilion died, leaving Naomi with two foreign daughter-in-laws, Oprah and Ruth.
You know, Charlotte, you keep saying Oprah because that's what we're used to, but
But it's
it's really
Oprah.
Orpah, and they misspelled Orpah's name and made it Oprah when she was born.
I'm going to say Oprah.
Well, I have a peripheral question.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the only Malin that we know about in the Bible that you can think of?
The mom, the only one?
The only what?
Malin, M-A-H, the Malin,
L-O-N. Naomi's son.
Naomi's son.
It may be, as we go down, we're going to see where I pull out those definitions and it'll give other references, because sometimes, remember, their names had divine meanings. So it could be in a different construct and utilized in a sentence totally different.
Yeah. Well,
And
the
not
reason
As I
necessarily as a
the reason I asked was because it a couple slides ago it said Malin meant sickly.
it does.
And I grew up, there was a lot of Malins in our Mennonite community.
Were they sickly?
No, they were farmers.
Well, it may mean something different outside of the Jewish language. So it may mean, something different. But yeah,
It was
I was
spelled,
kind of, when I read the meaning of their names, which you guys will see on in the slides, I felt like it was just like I had sons that they're gonna die. Their names were so bad. It's like if that's what you were told to name your children, it's like, well, they're not gonna be with me long. So 6 through 15, Naomi decided to move back to Judah when she heard that there was plenty of food there. So they left, there was no food. Now there's plenty of food. Her two daughter-in-laws started to accompany her, but when she urged them to return to their homes in Moab, reminding them that she had no more sons to offer to them as husbands, Orpah, or Oprah, kissed her mother-in-law and went back. Notice the different attitudes of the three widows. Now you got to bring into the fact that you have three women, but these three women have something in common. They're all widows. They all know what it
but
is to
as I
lose.
remember, Nate, lose what?
Go ahead.
Sorry. As I remember, I think Naomi had something to do with peace, and I think her son was like the opposite or something like that. It was really, I have to check that story again. But what were you saying, the grieving widow? They had something different. They were similar, but
They
something.
all had that in common. They were three widows. The mother-in-law had lost her husband. The daughter-in-laws had lost their husbands. They had that in common. They all had lost their husbands. And sometimes I don't think that's highlighted anyone I've ever heard preach it or anything. I may have missed someone that did, but I think that's an interesting thing. And you have two women who are young women who now have no children. And they're just following their mother-in-law around as if it's their duty to take care of her, to go with her. And she stops and says, look, I don't have any more sons to offer you. Go back to your homeland. So notice the different attitudes of the three widows. Naomi was a grieving widow, stripped of the earthly joys of her husband and family by divine judgment. Orpah, or Oprah, having soberly considered the words of her mother-in-law, proved to be a leaving widow, choosing the easiest and most convenient course. I don't think that's true. I think this commentator is building something in. You don't know what she had to go back home to, because after all, she married outside of her community.
Mhm.
We don't
I
know
don't
if
know
that
how,
was the, huh?
I don't know how they treated widows in Moab. At least
Exactly. So
in in Judah, they were going to be beggars.
basically, even though the law said the widows and the orphans were supposed to be taken care of. And guess what? She may have known that and said, I'm not going to be treated like a beggar.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was a better treatment, or a built in their religion, a law of what the next move was as far as who she would marry and things like that. We don't know what her situation was, and I did not do a study on Moab to pull that into this teaching. I probably will the next time. But Ruth was a cleaving widow, clinging to Naomi in spite of the latter's discouragements. When Ruth chose a new life with Naomi, she knew that it wouldn't be easy. There was hard work and poverty ahead since they were without a male provider. There was separation from home and loved ones too. So let's measure those decisions, because when you read the text, Naomi had to really say, now look, y'all need to go back home. You don't need to go with me. I don't have any more sons. I don't have money. I may have property there because of the way the Jewish law, but I don't have anything. Go back home. Your families have money and they have a way to take care of you, and other people, you have a husband. I pray you find a husband and things like that. And Ruth is like, no, I don't want to go back. Now, we could speculate on that all night. Maybe she didn't want, maybe her home life wasn't all it was cracked up to be, and she wasn't going back no way.
He could have chosen some more positive words to describe Ruth rather
I
than a
agree.
cleaver and a clinger.
I agree. I don't think that's what she was at all. I think she was a woman led by the Spirit of God. I think she recognized love when she saw it. Her mother-in-law had been nothing but kind and loving to her. I don't think she wanted to leave the presence of someone that she loved and had loved her and taken care of her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
She wasn't tossing the dice. And just like Oprah, I think she knew she had a better thing in her mom and dad's house. Because she left quickly, like, okay, love you, bye. See you. Maybe that's true. This is a place where we raise the hard questions and we're critical of it.
Well,
So,
but you can also say what force is in the region that Oprah. I read Oprah when I read it too, and then I had to look at it. But she may have been raised to be a certain way, and that's kind of God takes that into consideration, and when I think about Ruth, or what it's saying about Ruth, she's choosing to identify with something that's been missing, and it seems like Orpah doesn't even recognize it's been missing.
what would be missing?
These pieces of God, and I think you're gonna hit it. I don't want to get too far ahead, but when you go over the names, because the Old Testament's types and symbols, or the Bible's types and symbols, and so what does Naomi represent, or these the peace of God, or God is my peace, or whatever it is, or the belonging, the wholeness, the things that we're supposed to emulate from God. Um, I think it's also highlighting a region, a geographic region, but I also think that it's showing how to identify, or how to belong to God regardless of where you're from in that region. Because here, Ruth, go ahead.
I'm going to raise this. Do you think these two women married two Jewish men and did not walk into a household that was filled with Jewish worship
Right.
and possibly had a type of conversion right there in Moab? Because it doesn't say that Naomi and her husband went and started just having a free-for-all with the Moabite people and worshiping their gods. Doesn't say that. So I would think similar, like with us, as people identifying as believers in the Jewish Messiah, Yeshua, when people come into our house, they ain't gonna come in with a devil's staff and say, well, I'm a Satan. Well, we don't do that here. You have to take that outside. This is a Christian. People say this is a Christian household. This is what we do. I think when they went and established themselves, they established a Jewish household, not a Moabite household. So friendship has no greater example. I think this was beyond a friendship. I think Julius is correct when she began to be with her husband, because there are all type of rituals and things that Jewish women go through before they marry. And I guarantee you, Naomi was still a Jewish woman. She was checking the boxes. They didn't just marry anybody. They married clean women who had not defiled themselves at temples where they would prostitute themselves. I guarantee you, they married good women. And as they say, clean women that could come into their household as Jewish people and not defile them. And they probably gave up the pork and the pork skins. And what else do the Jewish people not eat? They probably had to give up that lobster. Yeah, and that catfish. So personal application, let's be the kind of persons who draw others to us and through our friendship to our God. So here is Naomi's name, a beautiful, intelligent, strong female fulfilling her greatness, classy, sassy. So I don't like that last part, but it was a whole thing. I couldn't cut it off. But I think they're meaning not like, but she was a pleasant. That's one of the things the definition said about it. She was a pleasant woman. That's a good trait. How many pleasant people consistently, even in our own household, sometimes we're like, well, you were pleasant yesterday. You wake up on the wrong side of the bed. What happened today? So I like that this particular commentary talked about, let's be the kind of persons who draw others to us and through our friendship to our God. Because some people get to know us and they don't want to know our God. They'll be like, that ain't the same Jesus I know. You know, guys, I almost did current events because I've been getting so many videos and things from the pastor, and I can't think of his name. On New Year's, his church did an all-out party with secular music and everything. And people have been sending me his sermons. Everybody wants to know what I think. I was like, who cares what I think? I don't go to church over there. But it's almost as if everybody's trying to measure, because as a comedian pointed out, when Kanye West did his gospel album and basically had a church, he stood up and just all out cussed it, while preaching. None of the Christian world said a thing. And with all the things going on, everyone is trying to measure. And I'm thinking to myself, why do you want me to judge what this man is doing? If they want to have a party and go, now walk it out. Now walk it out. I have a colleague I have discussed my personal opinion about some things with. For me, there is a measuring thing out there, because whoever the people flock to, that means that person that is the leader can sway those people. And I think they're throwing everything at it, trying to get certain people back in. My husband turned the lights off in here. Alexa, turn the lights on.
Back into what?
Say that again.
Back into what? They're throwing everything at what to get back into what?
People are leaving the church. Young people, middle-aged people, I think some elderly people leaving the church. And they're trying to pull people. People don't come and sit and listen the way they used to. They want to do it in this format and other formats. And so this gentleman, he has a large draw of entertainers as well. So when I got the other sermon today where he's preaching and saying that, poor it's almost like he said poor people are the ones committing adultery and doing stuff. That's why they don't have money. And I thought, what does this have to do with money? It was real wonky, but I didn't respond. I just said, look, don't fall into the bubble. I don't live in that bubble. And I could spiritually go into it and try to dissect it, but why? God's not calling me to do it. I utilize my gifts where God calls me to utilize my gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the thing, kind persons that draw others to us. The thing is, we have sometimes, especially in various religions, we have conniving people trying to draw us. I think I mentioned Sunday because I sent Angela the video where this preacher was preaching and a woman comes into the church and says, I'm his girlfriend and I'm pregnant, with the whole congregation sitting there.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And the people almost jump on her, rip her shirt off, drag her out of the church. And the preacher has pulled out the polity for the church and is telling them why they can't put him out. That is one day I would have said the devil is a liar. I'd have hit that joker in the head. It's crazy.
30 years ago, though, that couldn't have happened. Back when I was younger, that wouldn't have, I just don't remember it being. It's crazy what a few years will do. Because
I saw the similar things when I was younger, so they do happen.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It just wasn't posted on social media.
Maybe that's
there
what
was no video cameras and phones up recording everything. So so this strangeness that we're seeing, remember I've told you that all of the planetary draw and things, the planets have shifted and are aligning in a different way, and the God energy, I believe, has been stronger. Oh, I can't see what I wrote up here. Let me move this down. Act 1 of the book of Ruth begins and ends in Bethlehem. It begins and ends in Bethlehem. Meanwhile, the narrator takes the reader through a series of tragic scenes that climax in Naomi's woeful declaration to the women of Bethlehem. So she gets back to Bethlehem. They haven't even forgotten who she is. Like they see her.
They recognize it.
I haven't seen, well, welcome back. It's not as if she got there and they said, oh no, she's been over there with the Moabite people. She can't come in. So Orpah or Oprah is derived from the biblical Hebrew Orpah that means fawn. So that's the definition. I don't know if you can see it. It is a little murky. So Elimelech is 6 times in the Bible. My God is King. That's Naomi's husband. And then really, Malon means sick from the word, and it also can mean a type of termination in the right construct. Why would you name your child that? I'm just saying. And he had that name before he left Bethlehem. I'd be telling her neighbors, don't say hey to me. Why'd you let me name my children those crazy names? And then Kilion is wasting away. Odd names. I mean, just odd names.
Well,
Decisions.
you know, when she got back to Bethlehem and the women called her and welcomed her back as Naomi, she said I'm no longer Naomi, call me Mara, which means bitterness. Yeah. So, you
Well,
know,
she didn't shy away from those little names, did she?
But see, it could also mean that she's bitter because she left the region from what she knew, even though she took it with her, um, craving or wanting that. And I guess I relate with that because right now I'm a little homesick, and it, I would be in a region that most people would consider um, similar to what we're discussing. And even though we try to carry these parts of God, but it does make you bitter growing up, and the nature nurture thing, being nurtured without those families. So I guess I see it from that perspective too.
Well, I took it that her bitterness was from all the death that had been around her husband and her sons.
the death and loss.
Yeah.
Because her life probably changed a whole lot when she moved to Moab. That if she had stayed there was a famine going on. But as you say, if she had money, they would have made it through. But the hard life came in Moab, not in Bethlehem.
I agree, but we also have to remember it could have been that her husband was the big push for this move. A bitterness could have come from, if he hadn't, made us move and all that, we'd still have a family. We may not have as much as we had before getting through that famine, things like that. But to say that you're bitter, bitterness is something that is deep. Bitterness is never a surface thing. Oh, it's deep. Bitterness means I can't go back and change it. Bitterness means I've got to live with this, even though I wasn't the one that did this, or I did some of it. I had my part in it, but other people had their part in it, and I'm bitter, and ain't nothing I can do about it to go back and change it. Bitterness. So I think her bitterness, let's face it, a hard life would do that to you. It would make you just just some veterans
Grief.
are bitter because of all the things they have to go through. Like I talked about the man that got a bill for $120,000. So Ruth renouncing the famine, the funerals, the farewells, the faith, the frustration. Come on, talk to me about bitterness, because boom, there it is. The famine. She done had all these funerals. She done buried everybody. The one that she married, the ones that she had, she done buried folks. The faith, the frustration. Naomi was given a God blessing in her daughter-in-law, Ruth. I think she had a reason to be bitter. I think she had a plethora of reasons. You have to read between that black and white to really kind of grasp. This woman had a reason to be bitter, but yet her daughter-in-law clung to her. There's nothing people can do. Love will disarm anything.
Now,
Anyone heard from Miss Virginia? Oh, Linda's talking. Linda, open your mic. Uh-oh, she can't get her mic open. Okay, she's giving a thumbs up, so I'm assuming someone's there.
She's okay.
All right, so go ahead, you guys talk about this. Naomi had to do with all this, but Ruth had to do with it, all of that as well.
there's one other thing that I saw and I didn't want to interrupt, but a few slides back, um, it said grace, and you said it should have said God, but grace was capitalized, which means it's a pronoun, which means it's somebody. And as I'm reading this and what I've been studying is these parts of God that she's emulating, I think it's important. And what I resonate, and I hope you would teach on this later, is Adonai. Because so there's a difference between the different parts of God. So Jehovah That's his covenant with humanity. But Adonai,
There is
the
no Jehovah. There's no J in Hebrew.
right. So we know that there is Jehovah. There is Jehovah. But the Adonistic parts of God deal with God's lordship and nature, and that's something I've been studying because he is God. He is God. He is lordship, and she didn't forget that. And these parts of God having grace, not just dispensing grace, but being in the realm where he lives in grace, and she having this grace and making people want to go after God. That's the Adonistic parts of God. And I know
So,
Charlotte would be able to put that in better context than I can because I'm wanting to learn those things, those Adonistic names of God, the Adonistic parts of God.
well, Adonai, from what I was taught from the rabbis, is just another way of them saying the Hashem. It's their way of not pronouncing. So that may be a study we do, maybe going into February, because I'm going to finish the book of Ruth, but I can look at the Adonistic aspects of it. But I know from what I know now, without delving into some reading, we can get into the names. The names are specific to God's character. That's why God is the God of righteousness, the God of healing, the God, the God that provides, the God who sees me. People will ascribe L to that thing that God did, the God that delivered me. So we can look at those Adonistic names, and generally throughout the year, I probably highlight at least 2 or 3 sacred names. So, but when we're looking at this in the realm of decisions, as we get ready to come to a close, the realm of decisions, all of the decisions and things that Naomi had made and things like that, she got back home and just said, "Don't call me Naomi," which was supposed to be pleasant. Call me bitter. And yet she begins to instruct her daughter-in-law, because of course now they have to get food and stuff, and they have the ways for them to get food. But look at everything both of these women had to deal with. Naomi didn't deal with this by herself. Both of them had to deal with this. The wives marrying into a family who know what it is to come out of famine. And y'all know people that come out of famine are raised, things happen. Sometimes they go one extreme, they're very, very obese, or they just hoard food, but they don't eat all of it. Famine can do wild things to people and their psyche and their human behavior. So we don't know what all of that means as well. Then all of the funerals, they had to be there to bury the daddy. Then they had to bury the sons. Now they're having to bury the relationship, except Ruth decides, no, I'm going to hold on to it. The frustration. So I know I accidentally added a slide that's going to be blank in here unless I took it out. So the author, this says, is unknown. Jewish tradition ascribes this writing to Samuel. It's dated between 1050 BC and 500 BC. The theme, God's sovereign intervention brings universal redemption. This was all wasn't about the children of Israel. It was still all about everybody, because it was about bringing the Messiah into this realm. It wasn't just about Israel. It's about everybody. Sovereignty, the Almighty Redeemer.
And I like that, the part where it says sovereignty, because that's something that we forget. God's sovereignty. He is God.
Right.
I liked it.
So this is one that is so much more, and then you see them in the direct genealogy of Yeshua. And I think we are getting close here. That's the blank page that I put on there when I was trying to add the slides. So decisions. I think this is all about decisions, how they affect, don't affect. Sometimes we go about and we make the most mundane decisions and we're not even thinking about God, but yet God is thinking about us, and there are things being worked out in our lives through the decisions we never think about, the things we do, ponder, and give so much weight to. I gotta make this decision. And usually those may end up being the small decisions, not the actual big ones.
Mhm.
Sometimes the biggest decisions we make is just to stop and look at someone and say, hi, I love you. How are you doing? It takes more energy to say, I ain't gonna speak. No, I ain't gonna speak to them today. That ain't happening. You'll look all over, you'll be done exercises, trying not to speak.
Mhm.
Decisions, they're all plan, processes, options, motivation, strategy, challenge, all of those things every day. We wake, greet the new mercies, and we make decisions. Just like Naomi, Ruth, and Oprah, or Orpah did. They all made decisions.
But now, how did she know? I know you're wanting to wrap up, but I need an answer. I'm sorry. How did she know when it was truly time to leave Moab?
I think if you go back and you do your homework and you study the Moabite people, I think as a woman without her husband, then it probably wasn't good for her legally, because most women could not go out and be a proponent for themselves legally in the market and things like that. So she went back to her people where she at least had a voice and people knew her and would not let her be of the wayside. She knew how to tell Ruth to go and glean the food and things like that. So next week, what I'll try to do is take us through the remainder of the book of Ruth, and we will have covered the book of Ruth in the month of January. All right. Any further questions? Thank you, Julius, for your input. Linda, did you hear from Miss Virginia?
Yes, the paramedics got her up, and Ernest is on his way to the house. He was at the grocery store.
Okay, they're not taking her to the hospital or anything?
No, they just got her up and got her back in her wheelchair. She somehow or another fell out of the wheelchair,
Okay.
but she's okay.
Okay. She might have gotten so happy with all this discussion. She just I will well, I hate sometimes I don't know when to call because you don't know if she's trying to get to the phone. She's not going to have the phone right by her. I don't want her trying to fall to get to the phone. So I may just message Ernest and say, please let me know Miss Virginia is okay. And if you guys don't mind, if I get a response, or Linda, if you get a response that we know she's okay, if you will just text everyone or do that email that I did, go through that email and do a reply all, and we'll just let everyone know that Miss Virginia is okay.
All right, I'll call back, once we finish up. But she said she was fine. The paramedics had gotten her up and they were gone.
Okay. So all hearts and minds clear?
Oh, Charlotte, remind people to remember to say a prayer for Miss Manuel's daughter Jackie, who's having an operation tomorrow.
Yes. So I don't know if any of you, most of you should remember Miss Manuel, because I miss her terribly, especially with her Christmas earrings that she used to wear every year. But Jackie, I know Jackie had to do a lot of work to get to this point, but she did reach out to her Beth Salem family. Linda, do you mind? Let's lift a prayer for Jackie. She has surgery tomorrow morning, hip replacement.
Okay.
And I have one other small request. Would you mind maybe, Pastor, reaching out to Reverend Brown for me? And maybe she could give me a call if she has time. I know everyone's really busy, but maybe that's something I wanted to reconnect with her.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
She's there.
She heard you.
She's on the site. She heard you. She's
Oh, she did? She's here? Oh, I didn't see her. Hi, Reverend Brown. You haven't called me.
She probably has her mic closed too.
Right. She's always multitasking. So Linda's going to lift Miss Virginia in prayer.
Gracious God, now we ask that you will continue to surround, embrace, and uplift our dear sister Virginia. Father, we ask that you will just continue to give her the mindset that she is going to have to try hard. It's not going to be easy. And that there are things that you know, that she knows that she can do